Welcome to The Ripple Effect. My name is Duncan Truter. I'm with Stephen Voyce today, as well as Jesse Daniel Smith. Welcome, guys.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to be talking about Migos and 300 Entertainment and the 360 deal. We're going to be talking about artists giving away their music for free. Should they? Should they not? What's the strategy behind that? We're going to be talking about music in Canada. And we're going to be talking about being a working musician and holding down a family or a relationship and what that means. So we're going to start with the 360 deal. So basically, the origins of the 360 deal. Record sales fell 50% between 1999 and 2012. Traditional deals did not take from all income streams. So with the loss of revenues in the last 2 decades, the 360 deal was created to take incomes from anything the artist touches, sometimes even including income from outside of the music industry. The label theoretically provides, in return, funding and marketing. 360 deals are often criticized for being unfair for the artist, reaping income from the artist in areas where the label doesn't deserve. Migos recently got out of their 360 deal with 300 Entertainment, but it was costly. So what Complex News said about the Migos situation here was essentially, this was said by Offset, 300 was the biggest hurdle. They tried to hold us against our will. He went on to say that, or P explains that for 18 months, we couldn't sell any product. Whatever was already out, that was already on iTunes or whatever, that was fine. But anything that we were putting out, it was like we were shackled down. So, Stephen, what are your initial thoughts on that?
Oh man, well, I mean, I've been in a situation before where I was signed to a record label, and I think it was a 360 deal, but at the same time, my music was shelved, and I wasn't able to release anything. So I can sympathize with Migos where they felt that they couldn't put out their own content.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's interesting because we live in a world where this social media and the internet makes artists want to be more free. It makes us want to create more and put things out. And if we're shackled down, it in many ways kills the process, it kills the creativity. But at the same time, you also understand why a label would want to make more money from an artist because, like you said, music sales are going down. And right now, it's almost like music has become more of an advertising of an artist for everything else they're going to do. So if you get your notoriety as a musician, and that gets you other kinds of gigs they can do, right? So you can understand it, but at the same time, there has to be some sort of limit to what they can take because it's kind of like you said it's sometimes they take money from things that are outside of the music industry, but are they helping influence that really? Like, do they have a hand in helping you push that?
That's their claim, right? Their claim is that everything is connected nowadays, right? They're selling the artist, not just the music anymore.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's so I had a similar experience to Steven where I was in a record contract. I had gone so many years just working on my own, and although I was getting feedback from the internet, it wasn't hitting the button I needed in my head, which was kind of like confirmation from the industry.
Yeah.
So when I signed a very similar 360 deal, for me it felt obvious. It was like, well, if they're going to take 50% of everything I make, but they're going to add a few zeros to my paycheck, and in the end I'm making way more with them,
that's worth it.
then I'm happy to play ball. But I had a very similar situation where they shelved it. And I think it's because the same person who's trying to get you to sign a 360 deal has their roots fundamentally in the old music industry, and are not aware of how you can have a record and something that you don't imagine is going to be a hit is going to just pop off. You know what I mean? Now we almost have like a...
Well, explain that a little bit more, because how I understand a 360 deal is sort of the label's solution to the changes in the music industry. So please explain how you feel like you said they're trapped in the old way of the music industry.
Yeah, I think that I think that the 360 deal is a way to... It's kind of the way that like a restaurant, when they're not getting enough clients, they will both raise the prices and lower the quality of the food. And although that is a response to the nature of how like there's more restaurants and Yelp is giving access to smaller places, it's an idea that's rooted in the old style. Like instead of capitalizing on social media and using marketing in a clever way, instead they go like, okay, let's look at the margins. What's the easiest way to make our margins wider still?
Right.
So I think that the record label doing a 360-degree deal, not realizing kind of the situation that puts an artist where, like you said, you become almost like self-loathing because you are unable to, if you think of expression and output as a way to release pressure, the same way that stretching or a massage or any of that stuff would be.
Yeah.
It starts to get pent up. You start to get frustrated. You lose trust in the record label. All your conversations become much more contentious. And the record label doesn't realize that the actual best thing for you to do is to release as much content as you can produce and let Spotify and the playlists and the tastemakers choose what is going to be popular and let it pop up. And the best way, I think, for the artist is to release like a quantity, because it takes nothing now. You can have like look at someone like a Post Malone, where you get like just like a little, you get like a backbeat, a fun hook, and that could become like a smash single out of nowhere, and it could be the #1 thing.
Sure.
So if you just let artists flex and try different things and just release stuff and feel as though they're being supported through the releases, I think it would be, it's what's funny about it is like the 360 deal would encompass whatever you release, but there seems to be this belief that by making sure that you are tightening in on them and only giving them the one record and doing it over the course of 2 years, that it's somehow going to be better for their figures or whatever. So anyway, all I'm saying is that like I think that the 360 deal is definitely just rooted in the old way, and then they are trying to make their margins wider by covering more, taking more money from your product rather than taking a smaller cut and letting you release more and seeing if you get a hit or you get some sort of thing that pops off.
Yeah, I think like you said, like a lot of labels have that old mentality. Not all of them, but a lot of them have the old mentality. And the way they see the 360 deal is because social media is it's kind of still a new beast. No one really knows where you can really make money off of it, but they're aware that there are income sources from it.
Exactly.
They make these 360 deals, so they go like, well, I don't know where the money's going to come from. It's going to come
But
from
they want it.
It's going to happen.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when it happens, I want that.
And they feel that they're responsible for, or they deserve some of that.
Yeah, but at the same time, like you said, they're using an old mentality of, we're gonna release one song now, and that's the song we're gonna force feed down people's throats for the next year. But really, in today's world, the way to put out music is to have that one song that's meant to generate money, but also along the way put out content, put out things that you're not necessarily even gonna sell. Sometimes just putting out a free song or a free 30 seconds of a song or whatever. You're continuously building on your brand, and that's what's important. That's where a 360 deal actually makes sense. If a label understands that it's brand continuity that you need to keep building on. That's not just now that it's his single, we're gonna put attention on him now, and once that's done, it's like goodbye until next year.
Unless it becomes a giant smash or something. Yeah,
exactly. No, it shouldn't be like that. So if they really want to, if they want to monetize off of a 360 deal, then they need to recognize that it's more than just focusing on one thing at a time, but really engulfing the entire career of the artist and understanding that you need to put things out all the time.
Yeah, because it's not like you're saying like I want to release 100 tunes this year and each should receive the same funding or support. I think that the argument they were having was like, let us just release stuff. Let us capitalize on the momentum that we're gaining from.
Well, that's what the artist is saying. Let's just release. They want to stay relevant. They want to stay competitive. They want to see their name out there. They want to, you know what I mean? All their other their competitors and the other people, their colleagues and all
putting stuff out. And
it's just people that they're doing features with. Yeah, it's part of being an artist, right? It's part of staying in the creative flow.
Plus, psychologically, I think it's really, really healthy to finish stuff. It's really healthy to put a bow on something and let it be and to move on. Yeah. Because
especially for perfectionists.
Yeah, especially for artists who are trend setting. If they're the people who are releasing like The Dab, it's like you kind of want them to like keep going, and like see what else you can.
It's a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. It's absolutely enormous.
Yep.
So in with your contract that you spoke about before, were you restricted from releasing new music? Were there similar restrictions?
Yeah, So I wrote an album called I Almost Went to College and Got a Job that I gave them right at the beginning of our relationship. Yeah. And they released 4 singles over 2 years, but never even released the record. Okay. So now that I'm out of it, I'm in the process of recording it again and calling it I Almost Went to College and Got a Job 2. This time it's personal or something like that, something extremely long. And the idea is to just show people that in the 2 years, look how much I've changed because I'm going to re-record the record with these new, tools and almost use it as a PSA against like, this is what can happen if you're stifled for this long. You know what I mean?
It's kind of funny how like whenever an artist gets locked into something for too long, when they finally get out, they do something so extreme. I did the same thing like after I got free from my label, I put out a 45-song album. I'm just like, you know what? I couldn't do this before, so bam, in your face.
A response.
It's a response.
Nice.
Almost like it's like we're not necessarily antagonizing anyone, but at the same time, it's almost like in your face.
Oh, it's like a slingshot. You get pulled back, and the response is going to be
there. It is 45 songs. Deal with it. But you know, I think in today's world, if you're gonna sign a 360 deal, if the artist comes to you and says, you know what, I'm also interested in, I don't know, let's say acting and stuff like that, and the artist is generally good at that, then the label should also put time and invest into trying to push that side of the career if they're going to make money off of that.
Right.
Totally.
So, being an actor, especially more recently, right? You're starting to feel that like your career in the music industry and your career in the acting industry. Do you feel, from a creative perspective and from how you brand yourself as well? Is it merging? Are they
Converging?
connecting there?
Yeah, no, they have to be. That's the most important thing for me is that. Because a lot of people will tell you, oh, and if you're gonna do acting, then, create a separate page dedicated to that. Nah, you need to. For me, this is who you are. It's like you were talking before. We actually had gone on this, on this thing right now. We were talking about how like you're the artist and everything. You're kind of an umbrella and everything is under you, kind of, under what you're doing. And then at the end of the day, it all ties back to you. And honestly, my acting really pushed forward because of my music. If I didn't have that visibility already because of music, people might not be looking at me as much as they're looking at me right now that I've just ventured into the field. So they play hand in hand, and I make sure that people understand that they play hand in hand. These are two passions of mine, and they feed off each other. As a singer, I'm able to tap into emotions. As an actor, I'm able to now take what I've learned as a singer, tapping into myself, to now tap into a character.
That's right.
So it all plays in hand. If tomorrow I wanted to
Childish Gambino.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very similar, right?
Very similar route, and I think that's what we're seeing in today's world is that more and more people are emerging and experimenting and having fun. And I think that's the whole point of being an artist is to challenge yourself all the time and to create and to go into different directions. And sometimes your fans will agree, sometimes they'll be like, man, I don't think so. But really, you just have to have fun. And that's why I keep saying, like, if you're gonna get tied down in a 360 deal, and you're that kind of artist that's going to branch out and do things, then your label needs to understand that and help you along that way. So I'm really lucky that my management, understands that.
Right.
And then they help me kind of veer off in different directions I want to go into.
Yeah, that's right. Especially when you consider that the great creators in history were always Renaissance people who did all these different things. They go down way harder for being innovative in all these different fields.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So record deals in general, they go off of assumptions of what an artist can bring in over the course of several years. Does this put stress on the artist to perform in a certain way?
I think it depends on the label. My label was always really giving me affirmation that I was doing all the things that I could be doing, and that it was on them to take it to the next level. I think as artists we can always do more with there's like within reason. But I certainly think that for me there was a pressure for results. Like more than my performance, there was a pressure of like, I'm giving you a portion of my income and I expect, a return. Because at the end of the day, I was like, we both want to make more money.
So it doesn't have to do with how productive you're being. It has to do with more so, okay, well, what are the results of these efforts?
Yeah, I think so. In my very particular situation, I was already producing ridiculous amounts of content, playing all the instruments, doing the video and the recordings and doing all the stuff. So for me, it was like, I can't do more than this. I'm already one guy who's doing like an 8 crew, thing. So for me, it was like in a very particular case, and I know with Steve as well, you're super proactive about your social media and stuff. So I think it depends on the artist. If you find yourself mostly sitting around, the idea is that if you want something to be your job, you're putting 8 hours a day, or you're doing your 40 hours a week, or you're doing whatever, and you are working in that capacity. But the hope is that the label will then take it and amplify that. And give you that much more reach. So it depends on the person to person. But for me, I felt not more pressure to do stuff, but now I put pressure on them to deliver results because I'm like, what am I paying you for? You know what I mean? Because essentially that's what I'm doing. I'm just giving a portion of my income to them, in the idea that like you're going to get a percent. So it's in your best interest to grow this exponentially.
Yes.
Which of course is not always the case.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, that like it's not just about the pressure that we have to deliver, it's also the pressure that they have to deliver. Like if they're not gonna do something that suits us, then it's just not gonna work.
That's right.
Like whenever I approach people that want to work with me and then they say things like, you do a lot of things and it's good, but sometimes it's a dangerous thing because then you do a lot and people don't know where to focus. When the second someone says that, I'm like, this is not gonna work.
They're showing you they're narrow-minded.
If your mentality already is that narrow-minded and you can't see that there could be a way for this to work, we're not gonna work.
So with that being said, considering that you're entering into a relationship, what would be the most important thing of a record agreement to you? to ensure that you can, express yourself fully as an artist?
Well, for me, I definitely think that short terms are critical. I have to know, like, my deal was 4 years with an option period at the 2 year. So I
Okay,
gave my
yeah.
signature for an extra 2 years. And if they wanted to cash that signature in at the end of the 2, they would have to give me some sort of large advance. So, but when it came time for 2 years, I said, like, we have to be done. Like, this clearly isn't working, and blah, blah, blah. So for me, 2 years was the perfect window where I knew, like, okay, I'll get out of this and I'll be 30. And whatever momentum they've given me, I'll still maintain. I will still benefit from that. And whatever, they're going to get a percentage of whatever work I did within that time. But I'm of the mind that it's like, I can strike lightning as many times as I want, especially with the internet. So I was like, whatever I do, even if they take a percentage of it, it'll be fine. But the short term is really what tied me in. When it was 4 years, I just walked.
Yeah.
I was like, it's too long.
Yeah.
It's too long to take a random chance on love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But 2, I
You
was
have to
very
decide.
yeah.
And you're locking yourself in.
Yeah, for 2 years, if anything, I was like, look, I'm going to get to the gym. I'm going to start, like, it gave me time to, like, become a human adult, Before that, I had just been doing, like, music full time, and it was nice almost to have a window where I was like, okay, some people are going to take the administrative work. But the reality is, like, I think you should only be even considering a record deal or management if you're getting so much opportunity that you can't even filter it.
Yeah.
I think we're at that
handle it
point now
yourself.
where it's like people have proven that you can do it alone with just some savvy and using social media and the internet. So it's like until you get to that point where you're so
The right
saturated with, you don't need help until you need it.
Yeah, I think I'm at the listen, labels are everything that exists, and if amazing deal comes in, I'll consider it. But I'm at the mindset now that I'd rather just have an amazing management team that I work with, that we manage, like, the career together, and from a music perspective, from a label perspective, more of a distribution deal, really.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that most record deals were catered towards, and especially in the past, towards artists that didn't really know what to do, and they needed
Well, it was also
someone-
about funding too.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
funding.
essentially a loan.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right,
It was
that's
a
right.
loan, and it was artist development, and also providing them with a studio. But like in today's world, a lot of artists, like myself and you, have our own studios. We produce our own music. We already develop ourselves. We don't really need all of those services a label can offer. All we really need is the marketing funds and the distribution. So for me, I think what's important in the record deal is if they can understand and assess your situation individually and not try to throw some generic every deal they present to every artist is the same. I hate that. Like, you can't just give
One fit for all.
Yeah, there's no one fit for all. There's specific cases, and if they don't do their homework and their just dues, then it kind of shows you where the relationship is gonna go.
For sure.
Yeah, ideally you could focus on creativity while they're out shaking hands.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Yep.
Well, yeah, you want to be working and focusing on your music. Yeah,
That's
on
right.
your
Go to
art.
the Sanka sets and, like, just meet people and throw my product at them because you want to.
Oh, you mean you as the artist would go and do that?
Well, I mean, ideally, I would be able to. I'd be able to do the choice ones. But
Yeah.
the reality is that if I can just focus on creating a superior product,
Yeah.
and then I have a sales team that's essentially out there
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to pitch it, going door to door almost,
Yeah.
like, that's ideal.
Great. Why do you think the music industry has many cases of artists being taken advantage of, and why specifically the music industry? Why is it so common?
I think it's because there's still this same I think people still have the same mentality about record labels as they had in the past, where it was the mecca of
It was the only
making
way.
it. It's like, I
Yeah.
need to get a record label, a record deal. Once I get that, man, I made it. So it's
Yeah.
the same things. A lot of artists, the second they see that record deal, they're so excited, like, oh, this is the accumulation of my work. Finally, it's happening. They sign it, and then 2 years, 4 years later, they realize, oh my gosh, what
Everybody
was I-
still feels like they need a record deal.
Yeah,
though,
but
you know?
it's like
Yeah, totally.
and I felt the same way too.
Yeah.
Right? At a certain point, the second I got I got a record deal, I was so excited, and then I
Yeah.
realized the reality that the record deal is not what makes you; it's
No,
you make
yeah.
you. And I think especially
That's the mature perspective.
It was
Yeah.
within you the whole time.
you had it the whole time.
You never needed the
You
suit.
never needed this contract.
suit?
That's right.
It was you. But it's the truth that sometimes the most corniest sayings are so true. But it's true that it's you have everything you need, especially in today's world where it's all online. You don't have to physically release a song. You can do it on iTunes, Spotify. You can put it out yourself. All you really need to do is learn how to be savvy from a marketing perspective. You obviously do need the money. There are different routes. You can look for investors. You can get a management team. There are different ways now to move forward in the music industry. And I think people need to be more aware of that. And the more aware they are of that, the less we're going to see people getting screwed by record deals because they'll only sign deals
Yeah.
that make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think it might be a mental health crisis. I think that is the big thing. I think the entertainer in general, I think that you have to have some access to some sort of strife to be able to do something great. I feel like a lot of the tragically, a lot of the really great artists have some sort of terrible flaw, and here I'm going to do something for you, and it's instant confirmation and affirmation and love from them.
Yeah.
And I think that the entertainer is especially sensitive to the smooth talking record label executive who comes in and is like, I see
pitching a dream.
It's like I see, that's right. They know how to use the language to make you feel finally like, oh, you've been chosen.
That you had as a child, you know. Like
yeah, you've been chosen. You've been picked out of a group
they
to.
touch on that,
that's right. So they absolutely touch on that, and of course, like talk is cheap.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just need that cheap trick, you know. You just need that like.
Exactly.
So that's exactly what happened with me.
Born salesmen, right? So
that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I think like a lot of young artists, like young up and like just new to the game, they're more susceptible because they don't know much yet. I think the older artists that have been there, done that, and know who we are, it's so hard for like a person from a label to come in and be like, you should only do songs like this. We'll say no,
I'm not into it.
You know?
Yeah, that's right. Especially, it also calls into question the reason why you're doing it.
Yeah.
There's oftentimes like. And this is upsetting, and you know, especially I've spoken to a lot of artists about going the route of YouTube and home production and getting their own videos done and stuff. And what I always tell them is like, you have to enjoy the work. You know, they're like, how do you get started? It's like, well, there's an idea of flow state where you do an activity and time ceases to exist. You're outside of yourself, and it's Some people call it meditation. You know, therapy often does this. You're in the zone. It's this flow state.
Get into that zone as well.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite. When you're scrolling Instagram, it's kind of this constant. You're almost in your head. You're looking, criticizing, judging, comparing, all this stuff. If you can find an activity where you get into a flow state where you're like, oh my God, 4 hours have passed.
Yeah.
Like, what happened?
Not only paying attention to the small stuff then,
Yeah, it's really good for your brain because you're it's like not sleeping, but it's also like not just consciously being anxious and running in your head. So you got to go like, you have to understand the value of deep, hard work in a flow state. And the reason you're making music and doing stuff is for the sake and the love of doing it. Like a child, the way they're coloring for the sake of expression. Like you have to really clue into that.
Continuous discovery too.
Yeah, or else you're not going to have the stamina to win because it's not like a 100-meter dash. It's like a marathon.
Yeah. Steven, how do you stay in the zone?
How do I stay in the zone?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I just love, like you said, I just love doing what I do. You know, I get excited. I get excited every single time. I get excited. I'm doing this show right now. I'm excited. Like these are the things that as a kid, I would think about, oh man, when I get older, I want to be able to do that. And now you're able to do that. I think just remembering, for me, is going back to a kid and going like, oh man, if I could meet Kid Steve right now, he'd high five me.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what keeps me excited is remembering that this is my passion, this is my dream, and I'm actually doing it.
Great.
Yeah. Getting out of the cynicism.
Yeah.
Getting out of the jade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
So let's get into a bit of controversy here with Lyor Cohen. So a little bit about him. This is from StopTheBreaks.com. So the 360 record deal mastermind, Lyor Cohen, one of the figureheads of the 360 record deal is none other than the veteran music executive Lyor Cohen. While he usually gets a bad rap for being strong advocate of the 360 deal, when it comes to this rap game, there are a few people with a deeper pedigree than Cohen. So he started out as an 80s promoter for legendary rap acts like Run DMC, Whodini. Later went on to manage artists like LL Cool J, Public Enemy. And then he went over to Def Jam, taking over Jeff Jam, and ushering in a new generation of multi-platinum artists like DMX, Jay-Z, Ja Rule. Over the past few years, then he went on to become CEO of Warner Music Group. And then over the past few years, 300 Entertainment has grown to become one of the preeminent independent labels offering 360 record deals to big-name artists such as Young Thug and Migos. So essentially, this was published by XXL here. When it comes to the music industry, particularly as it pertains to hip-hop, of course, they're talking about Cohen here, something that he said in a meeting with Young Thug, and this is a quote here from Cohen: "If the music is popular, Young Thug's music, he sells tickets, he sells merchandise, he sells endorsements, and it's a compound effect. And then he went on to say also that I understand, speaking to Young Thug, I understand that you're shy and you don't like doing it, but the fact of the matter is your fans actually want to hear it from you. And then he says in a conference meeting, presumably about an interview or radio spot, you're going to keep them guessing, right? Essentially, this is the whole 360 deal mentality. You're going to keep them guessing, but we're going to take advantage of the fact that they have a huge listenership, and we're going to communicate to them, right? And then pitch specific things that they've set out in their plan.
Right.
So, in terms of that, what do you think, Jesse or Stephen, what do you think Lior's intentions are?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear. It's like, I understand, and he's not wrong. I understand from his perspective. He has the resume. You know, he's got the experience. Like he is the type of person who can pitch this kind of mentality.
And that it speaks to young artists too. Yeah,
young artists, especially whose main intent is to be, as though like
quote unquote make it, whatever that
means
to them, which is again a vague thing.
This is to me like literally selling your soul to the devil. Because you think you want the thing more than your soul, and you think it truly is a valuable exchange. But in this case, it's like, I think again, there's a huge overvaluation of celebrity, extreme wealth. You know, there's too much of a like, why do you need these things? It's just to show others that you have it, really, right? There's a shelf of like, after you make $100,000 a year, happiness doesn't increase, and actually it starts to decline.
Yeah, I know that study.
There's a bell curve. Yeah, that's right.
Bell curve.
So what are you feeding into? You're feeding into you're the snake in the tree. You're going like, here's the apple, man. You want it. I'm telling you, you want it. Not realizing that it might actually pull you out of the Garden of Eden, which is this like creative innocence of like you're just making for the sake of making. But it's so appealing, especially when you start mentioning like, I've worked with your heroes.
Yeah.
And for him, it's an easy pitch. He's like, yeah, my skill is I am the middleman.
Yeah.
In an industry that is moving towards squeezing out any extra moving pieces, his pitch is as clear as day. It's like, I understand his intent. It's relevancy. You know, it's legacy.
Don't you find it kind of odd that he keeps pointing it at Young Thug to do all the heavy lifting, to do all the work? You know, if your music sells, when you sell merchandise, when you know, so on and so forth. He's not really implying anywhere in these quotes that, you know, he's gonna provide any financial backing, marketing, promotion. He's not talking about what he's going to do. It's very much about what the artist is going to do and how much they're going to take advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think from based on the quote, we can't really assess what exactly is going to happen, so I can't really comment on as to whether or not he's actually going to do anything. But I think inherently people look at the 360 deal as like the worst thing that ever happened, and it can be important. It can't be a good thing if used properly, because you can understand why, like I said, a label would want to make money off of the artist's other ventures, because it is true that if they become famous, everything they do is going to kind of be directly tied to the fact that they were made famous because of the music. But the label also has to have a strategy into how they can actually take advantage of that by actually working to make it possible. Like I said, if the artist wants to act, the label should also now think, okay, well, the artist wants to act as well. Let's help push that. There has to be to sign a 360 deal for me, there has to be some sort of marketing plan that is aware of the specificity of the artists and takes advantage of all of the artists' skills and traits. But it has to be there, that the label has to do their just dues for it to make sense. You can't just say, yeah, I'm going to sign a 360 deal, you're going to make all the money off of everything I do, but you're not going to do anything. You know, that doesn't make any sense.
You want like a homogenous marketing plan that includes all the things.
Yeah, it has to include, everything.
Yep.
And I think record. I don't like a lot of contracts because a lot of them try to box you into something, and that's very important to move away from. I think a lot of artists do that, and they end up hating the industry that they end up loving. They loved it so much because they feel like they're now trapped. I think creativity has to be left open. The artist should be allowed to create and experiment and have fun.
For sure.
Because if you just create this whole idea of the pop star
and release works to their fans as they wish.
This whole idea of a pop star that only does a certain kind of thing it's not gonna keep working, because artists are becoming more aware of what they can do without a label, and they want to have fun. They want to experiment. If you make someone do the same thing over and over again, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Like honestly, what's the point? If I was told to make the same kind of music day in, day out I would probably quit the industry.
Yeah, but it's just such a phenomena with the music industry in particular. Just this idea of, you know, big organizations, the big three, big labels, you know, big label executives with a lot of power, a lot of influence, right? Very seductive, right? And it's just this idea of just squeezing everything they can out of really the center of the talent, right? The thing that matters most. Why don't we find this more? I mean, we do find it in acting, but we don't find this that much more in other industries.
I think you do, and entertainment in general. Like, look, even
Entertainment in general,
look at
I would agree with.
the video game company. Like, I love the publishers, but sometimes they'll squeeze the hell out of a franchise, like, you know, Call of Duty or whatever.
Oh, okay. So,
pump it up
yeah.
You're talking about
over and
EA
over.
with doing loot boxes
At
and
some point, you're just like, gosh, it's the same thing over. Can you imagine being a developer?
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. So, but my point here is that if you're a developer working for a video game company, or you're like a level designer or something like that, or you work in the marketing department, you're essentially working for a large organization. Sure, you're employed, right? You're not an entrepreneur. But there's you know, you get benefits, you get a regular salary,
Infrastructure.
you know, you get infrastructure, you get opportunities to learn, grow, move up, whatever. So that's a lot different than somebody with a huge amount of talent, you know, coming into the world and trying to express themselves, change the world, you know, and then along comes a culture vulture,
yeah, that's right.
right? So what is it about the music industry? What is it about entertainment in general?
I think it's
Is it
probably.
related to fame?
I think
The
I think musicians especially. It's like nowadays it's such a you know, it's like now it's so easy to produce music at a super high quality in any situation. So
Yeah.
I think that this is why we're kind of escaping the grasp of it. But at the end of the day, I think all entertainment is like exploitation. Really, I mean, like, and the center of exploitation is like. You know, it's that. It's like any other thing. If you're considered a product or an asset, you do want to squeeze as much life out of it as possible. You know what I mean? Like if I was working at a restaurant, I would be using every part of the vegetable or whatever because I'm trying to guarantee my own numbers. You know, at the end of the day, the people who are running these companies, all they're really trying to do, hopefully, is provide their children with a better experience than they had or whatever. You know, and they're feeding into their natural, like, paternal urges, let's say, from the perspective of a man, where it's like you are just trying to guarantee your own survival. And sometimes that'll come at the cost of an artist, especially if you yourself are not an artist and you don't understand that experience. You will, like, you know, it's like the Pink Floyd, The Wall, the idea where it's like, you know, the guy's like super strung out and they're just like, all right, let's give him something, and then he can get on stage and he can perform one more night, and then we'll get him on the bus and we can figure it out. You know, it's like there's such a history of feeling as though the talent are like cattle almost. You know what I mean? I think this is just again, it goes back into the exploitative nature of, like, an artist wants to perform, so you can go like, all right, let's see how little they'll do it for.
Yeah.
And it's always been like this. You know what I mean? I feel like it's, you know, now we're just getting to a point where the shackles are coming off of the artist because they are seizing the means of production, and they now have power at the negotiation table where it's like, I have 1 million Instagram followers before you even showed up.
Yeah.
You know, I already look at people who are successful on YouTube, guys like PewDiePie and stuff. I bet he's like not desperate to find someone to help him with distro or something. You know, he's got YouTube who are promoting his product because YouTube is like, yeah, we are only a series of content creators, you know, and then we get our ad revenue, and like we don't have to take anything directly from them, and we don't have to alter their process, you know. And now we're even seeing that YouTube is clamping down on some of the things about swearing and stuff, and just the response to that was incredible. And they're flexing their market share, you know, of like YouTube is the source for video. You know, anyway, so I think it's just it's exploitation, and it always has been. It's just now we're becoming less. Not only are people becoming more like woke about the idea of like less is more. We don't need to be billionaires. We don't have to have a ship that says we don't have to have like a plane, I should say, that has our name on it anymore. You know, it's becoming easier and easier to do it without the middleman.
Yeah, it's the members of the millennial generation that are
that's right.
that.
They're figuring it out, and also they're making $8 an hour, so they're like, maybe I don't need a house.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to free music.
Do it.
Should artists be giving away their music for free? I'm going to read a little something here from relevantmagazine.com. It's been one of the biggest debates of the first decade of the 21st century. Is it okay to download music for free when you can buy it in other places? Does it harm the artist to not pay money for their music? And does this make downloading free music immoral? So the debate has been had over again, pitting the angry Lars Ulrich of the world against the pauper poor, millennial hipsters who have known nothing but illegal downloading for most of their lives. So that's a great topic to get into because I believe both of you guys offer music for free on your websites and on your platforms. Do you guys have a strategy when you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, as an artist, you want to, if you're gonna put out free music, you want to control where the free music is being put out on. You know, for example, I when I put out a free song, it's usually on my Instagram, or it might be on SoundCloud. But I put out a free song, you're like, yeah, you can listen to it, you know, or you can stream it, or you can download it. I think the problem happens because I think it's important, honestly, to release free music as part of your marketing strategy to build interest and to grow your brand. I think the problem is when people start to download music that was not meant to be given away for free, that's a problem. You know, like if I put out a song on iTunes only, and someone cracks it and then, you know, gets the song for free and now shares that.
For sure, it's hacking the system.
That hurts, you know, my profits.
Yeah.
So I don't, it all depends on the intent of the artist. If the artist wants to give away free music because their goal is to not necessarily make money off of the making of the songs itself, but off of shows and you know, like, you know, using their growing fan base to now venture off into different things to make money from other sources, then by all means, do what makes sense to you from your own strategy. But if the artist is now putting out a song that's meant to be purchased and you're taking away from that by downloading it, that one specifically for free, then you are hurting the artist.
Yeah. I think it depends on your trade a little bit. If you're a recording artist and you're putting out, you know, your assets out there, you're putting out your products out there for free, and what you primarily do is you are a recording artist, as opposed to someone who's touring and they put out a song for free to promote that tour. Those are two very different scenarios, right? And one could be more harmful. One is more harmful to your career potentially than the other.
Yeah, so I'm kind of on the other side of this where I'm completely like I am honored if someone throws my tunes up on BitTorrent and people are actually downloading it. You know, in a
you just want the exposure, you want the interest, you want the traffic, you want the streams.
That's right. So there's a few things for me. Like my number one value is happiness and comfort and lack of tension. And the easiest way to live like that is to understand things and to accept them, especially things that are out of your control or things where it's like, I'm not Metallica. I don't have that kind of thing. I can't this isn't a fight I could even win.
For sure.
So because of that, rather than fighting against the waves, I try to go with them and understand things like, for example, I often talk about how, with other people about this concept, about how like when GPS came out, it literally slaughtered the map industry. Like it just totally destroyed the map production industry. No longer did anybody need to have, oh, I'm going on a road trip, I got to get maps or whatever. Because I was so part of that genocide, and I'm like that with many, many industries where I fully accept the advantages that put other people out of work. I just have to assume that music is the same. And what's going to happen is that putting out music for free becomes the loss leader. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it becomes the like the example that actually I was reading about was that, you know, someone like a Walmart or a bookstore or something will have like a magazine section.
Yeah.
And a magazine section like never ever makes profit. But the person who comes even just to flip through the magazine is probably leaving with something where the markup is so incredibly high.
Of course, it brings you in, you know?
That's right. So
also the concept of the free samples, companies giving out free samples, it hooks you.
Yeah, no, like there really is nothing for free. And in my experience, like exposure and in a marketplace where the currency is attention, you know what I mean? Yep. Especially now that there's never been more value on the live performance, and there's never been more value in the vinyl record since, of course, the birth of vinyl.
Right.
Like, I think that there are premium products that people will purchase happily, but only if they're aware of you, and only if you know, things like, you know, they were getting ready on their wedding morning and they decided to play your music, and these memories are being embedded, and like, or like this tune I played at my wedding, even if it was for free, or they played it off Spotify, which is, you know, borderline free. It's like fractions of pennies. I understand that they're going to come see me and buy a shirt and buy a vinyl. And there I made $50 off of them. Whereas if I had been like, no, there's a paywall, it's 99 cents, I could have foregone that like $49 that I would have got, plus the human experience of interacting with them and them sharing the story of like, yeah, I don't know, I came into your record somehow and like we loved it and now I listen to your stuff, whatever. So for me, I've fully given into the fact that like I'm not going to win this fight, nor do I even have the army to begin to combat it. So rather, I start playing into it. Start just being like I've had people approach me and going like, yeah, we're putting a tune in a documentary. We have no money. I'm like, take it. I can take my MP3 and I can make infinite copies of it at no quality loss. So I'm like, it is nothing to me. You could have stolen or you could have gone for another artist. Here's the tune. Same company made a documentary for Netflix, came back, gave me a nice little one-shot, $1,000 sync placement or whatever. And this is all because I was like, just take it. Okay. I've already made the song. It's sitting in my Google Drive. Yeah, I'd prefer for it to be out there. You know, but that's my perspective as someone who has the luxury of doing everything myself.
Yes.
I've already put in the work for that. So for somebody who is, for example, it is costing them $20,000 to make a record, I can understand why they're way more
you're putting all that money in, it's ridiculous, and then you're offering it for free. That's what many musicians are doing.
But then it's the same conversation of like, it's like a dude who owns a calendar store.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are you thinking? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, maybe the calendar store can't work anymore.
Yeah.
Not because calendars aren't beautiful, but because, you know, fighting against the waves, you're going to have a life of cynicism and you're going to be like, oh, I hate what has happened. Yeah. Rather than staying loose and adapting.
So, well, then what you're going to find with that theory that you have, what you're going to find is that more and more musicians are going to spend less and less on producing music. Mm-hmm. They're going to be their budgets are going to decrease. Their production quality might go down. They'll stop seeking out top producers. And don't you think that that'll lead to a lower quality of music out there?
No, not at all. Yeah. Not when you have the flow state people who love the science of it, but also you got like even Spotify.
Not every musician's an engineer. Not every musician's is comfortable recording
with
themselves.
But I would argue that quality is completely subjective. I mean, if you go look at a Picasso, you're not going to go like the idea of a perfect art is not like wow, this looks like a photo. It's not about that. Look at guys like Mac DeMarco, who kind of benefit from recording through like broken tape machines and stuff, especially when you consider that Spotify has their own normalization mastering that goes through it before it even hits a thing. So all the tunes are at the same level. Yeah. And if you have like so much bulk at the low 50 hertz range, Spotify will, before it gets through the door, they're going to give you like a pat down and they'll pass you through to make sure that it's up to broadcast standard.
Right. Yeah.
And then, like I said, there's always going to be the high-end killers who are out there pushing the limit of like banging clean audio. So I don't think that the argument of there's going to be way more lower quality tunes is valid, because it's just like, you know, that feels a bit like a straw man argument. Yeah. In terms of like, you know,
my perspective is that, you know, with such easy entry into the market, you got all these people who are, you know, they're not necessarily, they're hobbyists or they're amateurs or they're not, you know, and that just kind of clouds the market. It just oversaturates it, right? It oversaturates what's available out there.
But that's the idea there, is that each tune is getting the same amount of attention. So most tunes are never going to be heard. So it doesn't, like, it does saturate it, but only that
same amount of attention if you're coming from like similar social media stature, or, you know, if there's different artists can put in money to promote their music and advertise it, right, and market it, right? So there's like funded right? There's all sorts of ways that it can change the playing field and not make it level,
I agree.
Right?
As someone who's had a lot of success in terms of like, I have a really healthy listener base considering my status in the industry. I have about 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, which is my main source. For me, it's like I still, and this is from my perspective as someone who has had the benefit of that listenership, it's like I feel like it's a meritocracy where it rises. You know, something that I'm not good at is something like social media. Okay, like I really have put all my eggs in the basket of like producing and releasing. So for me, the meritocracy of like, because I put so much energy just on that, and I've done it in a strategic way. Whoa. Because I've done it in a strategic way, you know, there's a real sense of like, you know, the cream rises to the top. Yeah. And you benefit from being able to push stuff out. It has nothing to do with the saturation. I don't think it's like clouding my, you know, like I don't think that like music as a whole is going to get lower. I think there's more of it, which means we're going to push the envelope further. And
Stephen, do you want to contribute to that? We're just gonna get somebody to come in and fix this for you. But yeah, Steven, I want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that we're in a position in the industry right now where everyone can have their own strategy. Like everyone can have their own strategy. So some people, like you will want to put out free music, but I think all this only works if there is a revenue source at some layer or at some point. Like you can't just say like free music, but you're not making money on by some other way somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Like and I think everyone wants to make money. I think the danger happens if suddenly we run out of ways to actually make money, and people are just putting out music as a hobby. If it's just a hobby and you're not making money off of it, then that's where the danger happens.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Do you guys feel that paying for something makes you appreciate it more, especially when it comes to music?
Well, I mean, like I have a Spotify, account. I have an Apple Music account, but there's certain artists that I'll always buy the music. For example, when Eminem puts out anything, I'm going to buy it. Even if I can just listen for free, I'm going to buy it. But
so what is it about that? Why? Like, what makes you?
Do that?
Yeah, so that other artists who are listening right now, they can kind of have an idea of what is it that makes a music listener actually put money on the table when music is so readily available for free?
I think it's when you're such a fan of the artist that you actually want to purchase it.
So it's got to be much more than the music itself.
Yeah, it's not just about music. It's about the brand and about the person. Like I would buy Eminem's music because I've been following his career for so long, and he's inspired who I am as an artist. So it's important for me to want to I know it sounds weird to support his journey, but I would want to buy his music because it's such a important part of my life in a way.
Okay. Do you think that artists should put a value on their music more?
I think artists should always put a value on their music, whether or not they're making money off of the music itself or giving away the music for free and trying to make money, from, I don't know, sponsorships or tours or whatever. There should always be a value in music. I think if you
I think there's a general feeling amongst many new artists and existing artists, people who've been at it for a long time, that they're afraid that nobody will listen to their music if they charge for it. They're losing out on potential fans.
No, I think there's always going to be a market that wants to buy music, especially if you've proven yourself. Like, before I got to the point where I felt that I could put out music and sell it, I had already garnered a fan base, and I had already given enough content to kind of warrant that. I think we live in a world where you do need to kind of warrant that. You do need to warrant the right, if you will, to actually put out music and put a charge on it. You can't just put out music and be like, hey, buy music, but there's nothing behind it, right? But people that have worked to get to that point should by all means, and can by all means, sell their music. But like I said, it all depends on what your strategy is. Some people are going to want to put it out for free and make money in some other way along the line somewhere else, and some people are going to want to make music to sell music directly, right? But I think it's really, at the end of the day, it can boil down to both, right? You can boil down to, you can sell. Some people will buy music. Some people will stream it. Some people will come to your shows. Some people, some companies will want to license your music and put it in a TV show. You might get sponsorships. So there's different ways to make money in the industry. So you can now tailorize your marketing or your music release strategy to that.
Okay.
And it can be specific to you, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. Something that a friend of mine who owns an indie record label said that I found pretty interesting was that he likes the exclusivity of pretty much paying for music, right? I mean, a lot of people are not paying for music right now. Yeah. He likes the exclusivity of finding like an obscure artist or whatever and paying for that music. He buys a lot of records. He likes paying, top dollar for his records. And he likes knowing that other people don't have those records because, they're $20, $30, $40 sometimes, right? Yeah. Do you, Jesse, I mean, for somebody who puts out a lot of music for free and it sort of has like a business model that centers around free music and then like you're profiting from the streaming and all that, would you consider doing something like that, like a unique product where you're charging, maybe upwards of $20, $30 for something? Yeah. So things that I've thought about in the past like that are like single pressings of songs, where it's literally like an original song that like no one else has access to. Because it's when you're looking at the if you're looking at the supply and demand. Yeah.
if the demand is high and then the supply becomes one, I think you do end up with this, incredibly premium product. And the beauty of that is that you can produce as much content so like everybody can have their own individual tune. In this case, it's like, is it worth $40 to produce a whole tune? Not really, but the experience that you're providing for your fan and giving them that one-on-one can be invaluable. And who knows how many people they are going to share. It's kind of like the Wu-Tang Clan, what they did with that record,
Right.
where only the Skrelly guy
Yeah,
ended
yeah.
up with it.
And he
But I'm
had
just
it,
saying that,
yeah, and the value went up. Like,
and I think that like
well, not the value was already very, very high.
Yeah, that's
it
right.
didn't go up just because he had it.
Yeah, but the idea was that like he could share it if he wanted to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that like
That power,
similarly, your friend who runs the indie label, he is in the 1% of music listeners. He appreciates music the way that somebody who's like super into bourbon will like go look for the perfect bourbon.
Right.
But I think the reality is
hasn't
that
hasn't that declined over the years though?
definitely.
Yeah,
But I think it is more is that like it's not that it's declined, it's that
People are
way more
appreciating music
people are
less.
listening to music.
More people listening to music, more people listening to different types of music. But I think the general appreciation has gone down a little bit for specific artists. People may love to listen to music still, but when you take like curated playlists, like Spotify, even YouTube playlists, they put on a playlist. They're not even paying. They don't even know. They're just cooking. They're doing whatever. They're loving it. Right?
Yeah.
It's great. A lot of music listeners who are just music listeners. They're not artists. They're not part of the industry in any way, shape, or form. They love the streaming, right? And how far technology has come to make that
Certainly.
convenient for them.
Absolutely.
But when they're listening to a playlist, are they recognizing who the artist is when it comes on? Do they know? Is there any indicator? Do they have anything in their mind that goes, oh yeah, I like this song, and then they can attach it or associate it with an artist, and then that helps the artist's career.
That's right.
I kind of fear that these playlists they don't give the artist the recognition.
I think that
because the person is not actively choosing or selecting or discovering the music, right? It's just being fed to them in a stream.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that like I wanted to say earlier is that I think that there's more competition for media. So I think that whereas once upon a time Netflix and chill might have been like come and listen to records. Like I think that people had relationships that started over albums. They had other. I think it's all based on like a human dynamic and like what kind of relationships. Like the media used to lubricate relationships. I talk about how like there's a lot of people who've talked to me about how I don't play a lot of live shows, and they were asking me why. Like the music industry has always been predicated on these shows, and it's like once upon a time you'd be hanging out at home, you'd be with your square parents. Maybe there's just literally nothing on television. Actually, maybe you turn it on, it's white noise. You're like, well, what are we doing tonight? You're probably looking for love, or you're looking for some sort of like interhuman connection. So you go down to the local shop and they have like a band playing, or you go to the bowling alley and there's literally like a Buddy Holly type guy like jamming there.
Yeah.
And you just think that like the live show used to be where people would come and hang out because there was no other options. If you look at a movie like something like Grease, everyone's at the diner all the time, and it's like literally packed, and everybody who's anybody is there, and they have some sort of music going, whether it's a jukebox or it's a band. And nowadays it's like there's definitely way more competition to fill that kind of lubricated space. But I still think that there's more people listening to way more groups. It's not like there's the one, like Aerosmith releases a record and it's just like, yeah, that's the new release this month. It's like now there's so much music that is getting heard. The pie, I think, is bigger, but it's sliced way more, and many more artists have an opportunity to get a shot at it. That I think that in the end it's actually a good thing. And even the playlist, which is literally like most of my income comes from these playlists, from music. So I think that like if you have some sort of inexplicable like X factor, it's never been easier to just be like, it's like your song title, your name, and the artist and the album that it's on. So you just like click through, like follow, and who knows, like you could have a fan for life now because you popped out in a in a playlist of drudgery.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Go ahead,
why I
Steven.
think it's super important. Especially in today's world, to really hone in on who you are and bring that forward and brand that and put that out there, because like you said, that whole X factor, or that je ne sais quoi, it's the part of you that's so you that no one else has that. And that's when someone to hear your music and be like, oh my gosh, who's that person? I need to go check it out. You have that opportunity. So people that just put out music for the sake that's just as generic can be. They're the ones that will most likely get lost in the sea of everything. But in that sea, you can stand
so
out.
it might actually incentivize experimentation.
Yep.
Incentivize
100%.
uniqueness.
Assuming you can release enough material to actually figure out who you really are.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, because I always tell people, like, you got to get 100. Can we swear on this?
Sure.
You got 100 heckin' tunes that come out.
I swear.
Before, yeah,
If it's
I was
a quote,
like,
no, if it's a quote, you can go ahead.
You got to get the first. You got to get the first
you know?
like crappy tunes out.
Yeah.
Because underneath that, like, you know, those songs, you start capitalizing on like what is uniquely your perspective on, you know, 145s, which is essentially like all the tunes are going to be. You know, like everything is just a reharmonization of a 145 or a 251 when you get down to it. So the end of the day is like, you know, you got to get through so many of them before you start really honing in on the thing that is unique to you. A great example of this is the Beatles.
Yeah.
They're playing in Hamburg. They're playing the strip clubs, learning every pop tune and playing 10 hours a day. And of course, they were the best band of all time. They came back being like, yeah, here's a tune. Sounds like nothing to you guys. But for us, it's like we've learned every kind of modal chord interchange. We've learned everything. And now they can just give it to you in a way that's so tight. You know, they were like, they had their PhD in pop music, essentially. And they were able to come and offer and then like evolve rapidly. You know, but the Beatles did not release their first record. It was like the first time they had hit a guitar. It was, they had spent like their 10,000 hours, if you want to use that concept, like playing every tune under the sun and then pulling from that. And then, of course, you had their individual ability for lyric and melody. But I'm just saying that, you know, it's you really got to put out all those tunes before you start hitting that stride of where your experimentation is just like, you know, the purest expression of your voice.
Yeah. No, I just think that because of the way music is released today, that we get to reach people that didn't necessarily listen to music as much before and now do. So it's now you're now able to tap into so many more people, so many different kinds of listeners. I've done shows where some people knew as soon as I walked in, like, oh my God, it's this guy, bam, and I've had people go like, I didn't know you sang that song, and I had people go like, I didn't know who you were, and now I'm a fan. So there's different kinds of people, but you get to really address them all.
Yeah, especially with things like Shazam.
Yeah.
Where you could be in a cafe that plays a 24-hour playlist. Essentially, you just raise your phone up, and it's
well,
like
Shazam is an excellent solution to that problem of, you know,
identity.
Identity and associating an artist with the music that the listener is hearing.
That's right. Yeah. Especially if you get the music in a space that you find comfortable, like a Starbucks.
Yeah, for sure. I want to touch on something here. Last thing regarding free music. This is from Relevant Magazine. So another intellectual champion of free these days is Chris Anderson, editor-in-chief of Wired Magazine. In his new book, Free, The Future of Radical Price, Anderson describes the rise of free economics and argues that free is not a thing to be feared for those who want to make money. Rather, it's a thing to be embraced. A thing to be embraced. Free, says Anderson, is a word with an extraordinary ability to reset consumer psychology, create new markets, break old one, and make almost any product more attractive. And it doesn't mean profitless. It just means that the route from product to revenue is more indirect. So would you guys agree with that? Do you guys think that music is changing consumer behavior and expectations?
Yeah, it's like we were saying, like some people will pull out music and sell it, and so there's a direct correlation between the music or the product and the revenue.
Yeah.
Some people put it out for free with the expectation that they'll either make money from some other way because their music is now out there.
Yeah.
So someone will listen to you and be like, oh, I like this person. They'll follow you. You grow a fan base, and you can make money off of, I don't know, like I said, shows or licensing or whatever the case be. There are different ways to make money, but we're getting more and more to a point where it's less about the direct correlation between the product and sales and now it's more, like you said, it's an indirect.
Yeah.
But you get to define that. But I still think
you get to define your business model, how you leverage free music for you, and how you monetize is more up to you as an artist.
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think the word free is always deceptive because it's not really free. You're not really giving the music away. It's not free. You're still making money some way, somehow. Yeah. So it's not really free.
Well, it's like Jesse said, lost leader. Yeah.
But I think, but for me, again, it goes back to what I said before at the beginning, which is if your intent was for the song to be sold and someone rips it, that is still illegal downloading, and that's not cool. Like I don't like that when people like will steal. It's stealing.
It's stealing.
Like, it's stealing.
Absolutely.
You're stealing the music.
It's illegal stealing.
Yeah. It's not fair. But if your strategy is to actually put out the music so people can take it without having to pay for it, but you make money somewhere else, then that's your strategy. But for the listeners out there, if an artist is selling a song and you do like the artist, maybe don't steal it. Don't steal it, because that's where you're now lowering the value of the music.
Yeah.
Putting out music for free is not lowering the value of it. But having a listener rip or steal your music intentionally,
especially underground artists, you have to support the artist that you love and respect, that are struggling to make a living, or maybe making a decent living, but like they still need the income stream to be able to keep doing it, to be able to keep putting out music that you love.
Yeah, but again, it's like artists need to be more savvy now. Like you need to look at what you're doing, how you can make money.
Can't just be up to the consumer.
Yeah,
is what
you
you're
can't
saying.
just be up to you have to now think, okay, well, there is a market that requires me to put out freemium. So let me navigate those waters. Figured it out. You can't. It's like if this is why Blockbuster went down the drain, because Netflix came out and they were like, no, we're gonna stick to the whole idea. People are gonna go and go rent, literally walk. Like, no, it's not gonna work. So you need
late fees,
late fees and all that stuff. Like, it's not gonna work. So the only way to stay relevant in any industry is to be apparent, or to be aware of the trends, where people are going, and how you can now take advantage of those business models and not stay stuck in the past.
Yep, well said. Moving on to music in Canada.
Booyah.
So, the music industry in Canada. In the U.S., we see a lot of collaborations, particularly in hip-hop. There's a sense of community and crew, right? Even hip-hop artists who are beefing with each other will collaborate. Can we say the same of Canada? The Canadian artists?
Yeah, but Canadian artists are always collaborating. I mean, it depends, right? Like, there's some people that won't collaborate, some people that will collaborate. But I think we actually live in a world. It's interesting. I don't really think there's any such thing as an industry per country anymore. I think the second your music goes,
there's mentalities in that.
It is mentalities, but the second your music goes out, you become an international artist instantly, because everyone has access to your content across the world. But I do think, obviously, the States has, in some way, a monopoly over the industry, because of it's been entrenched there for so long. And I do think, for Canadians, a lot of Canadians, the second they put out content, start putting out music, their idea of getting to the next level is to go to the States.
Yeah, of course. That's the mentality. So why is that?
No, because they were the kings of image.
Yeah.
I mean, like everything that, for example,
It's
like
called
growing
soft
up,
power in politics.
yeah,
right?
growing up in Quebec, it's like I only watched American
Yeah.
content all the time. Really, I mean, like it was always like they've been the leaders, you know what I mean? They
in
just have,
entertainment,
they've
yeah.
always had the best image, and anybody who was anybody even if you were killing in the UK and Europe
star
and whatever,
system, yeah.
you still wanted to break into, because it was like Hollywood. Like it was just most of the media that people were consuming was coming out of America. I think that's greatly shifting as we see the rise of Indian media.
So
like
can
Bollywood is
you
killing.
reach to the same heights that you can in America, in Canada? Assuming that you're just functioning and selling in Canada,
No,
and touring in
there's
Canada.
no way.
You're not international. You're not
There's no way.
putting things online, and
No, it's just population.
Yeah.
There's just not enough people here.
because it's a population thing.
I think it's a population thing, but I also think that mostly it was this idea that anybody who was anybody was going through America. But I honestly think that the political heat that's happening in America is lowering their standard. It's actually making way for new superpowers. I think that like in 10 years, this conversation might be different, because Canada is producing like so many relative to population. I think we're producing a ton of killers. You know what I mean? And I think that as we realize like the cool kid is actually not as cool as we thought, and their brash kind of abrasive personality is not actually that not actually that nice. We'll start to see a rise of more like European influence. Anybody under the monarchy, it'll be like Canada, Australia, the UK, that kind of stuff. And I think that it was just that everybody perceived America to be the coolest, and now I think people are starting to see that it's kind of the end of that, market control of what's hip.
Yeah.
I think that now we're seeing way more again out of the UK and Canada, especially with legalized weed coming in. I think it's gonna create a tremendous tourism
too.
boom, and people love to see shows, and I think that we're going to see way more exposure and content and stuff being produced in and around Canada, which will, because the internet, like you said, is borderless.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you said, I'm Nigerian also, right? So but a lot of Nigerian artists are now exploding, and they're not necessarily tied to the States. Like the labels are still founded in Nigeria, and they're exploding across the world. So I think, like you said, because of the political climates in the States, and also social media, people are now venturing into other places to kind of discover music in different places. But Canada specifically, as you know, I think Canada still looks to the States for where the big artists come from, right? So it's harder for a Canadian to stick to Canada and blow up within Canada, because the expectation is that, well, it's not from the States, so we're not really paying attention to it. Like, you know, artists like Drake or The Weeknd or even Celine Dion or all these
Justin Bieber,
they all had to go there first.
Yeah.
And then
Well, Canada has many greats, but what made them great
is going there. And I hate to say, but like
exactly
with the release of one of my most recent singles, Summerless, there's a lot of Canadian media here that's been extremely helpful. For example, the Vocalist Magazine and you know, some other places. But the second it got into the States, it just took off. Like there was no red tape. It just went bam to different DJs and was playing on the radio and this and that and that.
I think it's more than just population, as you were saying though before. I think it's also the industry there, the contacts that people have there, right? It's a booming business there. I think in Canada, I think we treat it as a cultural thing. We get grants. Canadian artists seek grants. They're funded by grants. You can't start unless you have a grant. You can't do this, that, record a big album, whatever it is, high production, unless you get a grant from somewhere. I mean, America has grants too, but like it's an actual
It's an institution
business.
here,
It's
yeah.
an institution, right?
Well, there's also a lot of, and I hate to say it, there's a lot of politics in Canada for Canadian artists, like, and I've seen it firsthand.
Okay,
where I'm
tell us.
I can't say. I don't want to say names. I don't want to say names.
Bare naked ladies.
Just
No,
tell us your experience.
I don't want to say names, but I've been in situations where people have said things, and I know firsthand that it's just bullocks. That they're just saying it because they just don't want to do something.
Yeah.
You know, but then the second it does so well in the States, then they come back to you and be like, "Hey, man," like, you know, but like, and that's, you see that a lot, and I think that's what hurts. That's why a lot of Canadians go to the States, because they see that. There's a certain plateau you get to where you start to literally see the politics, and it's so infuriating that you just say, you know what, I don't have time for this. I'm gonna go somewhere else. And it's not fair, because I, as a Canadian artist, I don't want to go the route where I need to go to the States to really explode, because I do feel there's a lot of Canadian artists here that deserve to really be seen, and there's an industry here that can be really developed. But there has to be a shift in mentality within the Canadian industry itself before that can happen.
That's right.
If not, everyone is going to keep going to the States. And it's ironically, when you do go to the States, they're looking here.
Yeah.
They're going like, oh my gosh, what's coming out of Canada?
How much so, really?
Well, this is what I was going to say is
LA,
that
New York, they're
I
thinking
think
about
that
Canada. Yeah,
I think that
looking to Canada.
Americans have always been amazing headhunters.
Yeah.
I feel like they've always had the credibility to pull somebody in with an offer. So I think that, like, for example,
But I don't know if they're specifically looking for Canadians or it just so
they're
happens that they
not.
found a Canadian.
Yeah, that's right. I think that they're on YouTube, and there's a plucky
And it so happens to
13-year-old
be
boy
a
who's like
Canadian,
playing, and Usher's like, okay, I'm just gonna make this kid like the biggest thing that ever happened.
Yeah,
So Canadians still need to get out there.
No,
you
but
know?
like
They do.
Like people like Drake, The Weeknd, and Justin Bieber and Celine Dion, they all Avril Lavigne,
Sure.
They all
Nickelback.
They all paved the way to now have
Morissette.
Alex Morissette. There's so many. They all paved. We can go forever. They all paved the way for artists, other Canadian artists, and that's why now in the States, the industry is literally looking for into other places. Canada, they're looking to Canada as well for talent, because they recognize that Canada has its own sound, its own specific sound that is new and unique for them. So they're looking actively, and it's unfortunate that you don't see the Canadian industry being as active, maybe from what I see anyway, as active as the States. Because I mean, my first record label was in the States.
Yeah.
You know, like, how come my first contract I ever got was an American?
Yeah.
Like, why wasn't it a Canadian? You know, why? And that's an important question. So Canada needs to, like I said, the industry has to evolve and change its mentality and stop looking to the States for all the great acts and content, and start looking internally. And
There's more investment there, though. There's more investment in.
Also, America has a lot of buying power in Canada.
Yeah.
Literally, like what they throw at you as a Canadian artist, and the conversion is worth more.
Yeah.
They go like, look, we'll give you this much in a deal, and it's like it's so it's more than if they were shopping around for an American artist. They just have literally more real estate that they can throw down on you. You know, they have this, but plus it's just sheer population. There's 10 times as many people working. You're bound to produce more top heads of every industry.
There's 10 times as many people, but if you think it from a perspective of scale, just because it's scaled a little bit more down in Canada, does that mean like an artist struggles that much more?
Yeah, but just think about getting from major city to major city. Like how much more of a commitment it is for me to get to Vancouver.
Touring in Canada is a pain.
It's a huge pain.
It's a pain.
There's stretches
it's
of
a pain.
Yeah, it's just even that. I mean, like we it's almost as though
money, man. Like
just that, or just being like,
or if you're flying in Canada, man.
Yeah, now
ridiculous.
we're going across the prairies and we're just gonna like power through it because we got to get to another major city. I think that like these are the things that are greatly affecting the lack of like there's just plus the crazy winter we have like consistently over the whole country makes it very hard to just like half the year we're out of business.
Summer in Florida, right?
Yeah, that's right. And also you can just bounce around. You can do
clubs,
different circuits that exist. There's their own pockets of culture within America. It's such a diverse. There's so many biomes. There's so many different everything. Whereas Canada, everyone's kind of it's a little more one note in terms of there's different shades of Canadians, but I think that there's like so many different marketplaces that are more saturated.
Do you think the fact that America is so much more competitive in pretty much
everything
in many industries makes a difference in the mentality and the go-getter kind of attitude?
Yeah, I think that they've got
Canadians are very polite. We're laid back.
I think we have different values.
How does that affect our business?
I think America is predicated on this like late stage capitalist idea, and I think that like more people. Also, let's just be straight. More people in America are hungry, flat out. The inequality is dramatic.
Well, hungry in both sense of the terms.
Literally,
right?
Literally hungry, but also actually
ambitious.
Are without. And that like coming from a situation where I was raised in a like borderline poverty, it gave me this like real like I was reading my high school yearbook recently, and my quote was like, "I'm going to be huge. Watch me do it." Like it was literally like so. There's never been a doubt in my mind that I was going to do this. And I talked to a lot of people who come from more like a middle class situation. And they're like, "What if I fail? Like, what happens if this doesn't work?" And I never had that sense. And I think that kind of inequality is probably really pushing the next generation of entrepreneurs to risk it all and go for it. And that has pros and cons, of course. But I just think that it makes sense that it's way more, bloody in America.
Also, the black community is much more vibrant in America. And if you look at the music that's popular today, right? If you look at what we consider pop music, R&B, specific flavors of hip hop,
of course.
Especially in the last 20 years, that's something.
Specifically after like we had like a run of like Mumford & Sons and Lumineers and a lot of like stompy white people music. You know what I mean? I definitely think that like now we're seeing a beautiful rebirth of neo soul and jazz and R&B and all that kind of stuff, which is really super popular, which is amazing.
And it always finds itself into quote unquote, as you said, white people music as well, right?
Yeah, it always ends up there.
The soulful, top line vocal, like infused into like a 4 on the floor dance track, like
totally. It always ends up.
I honestly I do think that that's why I think the millennial generations were just such a very key generation because we're trying to change that mentality. I think like we're recognizing that like Canada has some really dope artists, and it's time for us to actually start working together as opposed to against each other. I see a lot more collaboration today than in Canada than before.
I'm telling you, this Trump thing is like really, I think, making people go. It's getting, I didn't get a chance to drop in because my mic was a little messed up. But the whole thing about value of art, it's like completely. It's just a belief. Like if everybody thinks that Bob Dylan is a legend, he is a legend. You know what I mean? It's just like that thing. And I think that as the cloud around America starts to dissipate, we start going like, why are we doing this? You know what I mean? Why, like, if so many more Canadians are traveling less in America, I think Canadian bands are going to tour less just because it's such a pain. More American artists are coming into Canada because they don't have to get a working visa to play here.
I mean, a lot of artists just don't, a lot of international artists just don't want to set foot in America due to what's going on right now.
Absolutely. Get your laptops, like, cloned at
So
the
great.
border
Bring-
because
come to
it's
Canada.
come to Canada
or stay in
We
Canada.
have weed.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Oh, great.
So your outlook is that it'll improve the industry.
My
in
outlook,
Canada.
my outlook is that Canada, especially with Toronto becoming the new San Francisco, and we're kind of leading the way with tech jobs and stuff. It follows. Like when the wealth starts to hit, we're gonna have smaller cities that become major cities, and they're gonna need
but
culture.
You gotta watch out for that wealth, and you gotta watch out for that for those premonitions and things like that. Because if you look at Vancouver, Vancouver is one of the quote unquote richest cities in North America, and it's also one of the most unaffordable when you look at salary versus cost of living. Right?
Yeah.
Cost of living is like ridiculous.
Yeah,
in
the
terms
foreign
of
buyers are
whether
destroying
you're
it.
renting or your own, or even if you own your own home and you've paid it off already, like those property taxes have skyrocketed, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, there's a lot of money in Vancouver, but if you look at the demographic of Vancouver, if you look at what Vancouver is, besides the fact that there's a lot of money in real estate there, the Vancouver is not a city where you can find a lot of art and culture. I was over there recently, and every time I go back, I notice more and more of my favorite music venues are shutting down.
That's right.
A lot of live music venues are being converted into different things. They're getting rid of They're getting rid of stages and replacing it with like those pinball machines.
That's right. That's right.
So it's just I don't think money and the wealth of a city necessarily translates into purchasing art, caring about art.
I understand.
You know?
I understand what you mean. What I think my belief with it is that as we do get these super cities that are literally impossible to live in if you're not making like more than $100,000 a year, I think that it's going to push people to take a town like a Hamilton, Ontario, and totally pull it out of the dark.
See what you're made of.
Yeah, and then these are the towns where, although like Toronto is going to be like, yeah, if you're Bruce Springsteen, you play at like some sort of giant stadium or whatever. But I'm just saying that like we're going to end up with these little pockets of people living and they need culture, and then suddenly you can string a tour across Canada, and you are driving 4 to 5 hours instead of 28 hours to your next thing.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's going to be pockets of population with 50 people who will come out to a small venue because they live and work there, and they want to appreciate culture, and they can't live in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, depending on how the next 20 years goes. But I'm just saying that I think that if we start producing little hubs of area where people are like living and working in Toronto, either via the internet or actually driving in and out, or as public transit becomes way better and we get like bullet trains bringing people around faster, I think that we're going to start seeing like the infrastructure that will allow for people to have more wealth in Canada will also allow artists to move around easier and connect, make Canada smaller still, and that'll make it much easier to sustain a tour or whatever.
Do you think location in terms of like what is it about places like specific cities like LA and New York that other what do they have that other places don't?
Generational influence.
Yeah.
Like they've just been in the game longer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that it's like, but and that being said, as Hollywood becomes, especially we start to see the demons in the closet that have been there the whole time. We do start going like,
And
okay, let's look at more.
becoming exposed.
You're becoming exposed finally, but they benefit from generational
Yeah.
wealth or generational
Sure.
influence, where it was the OG place. So now they've had that real estate for so long that they have this pull. But I think the internet and all sorts of things are pulling them down from being on a pedestal.
Yeah.
For Steven, where do you see yourself living in the future, and why? And how do you think that'll affect your career as an artist?
I love Montreal. Man, those winters
Are brutal.
The winters. Oh man, if it was up to me, I would live in Montreal during the summertime and springtime and winter. I don't know.
Sure, where would you head?
I
If
don't
you could
know.
head anywhere for the winter that you think would benefit your career as an artist, where would you go?
I don't know why I'm gonna say this, but for some reason, France. I don't know why.
Good choice.
I lived in France as a kid, and as a kid, I absolutely hated it.
Right.
Absolutely hated it. But as an adult, looking back on my memories, there's a thing about it. There's a charm that I actually want to revisit. So I'd see myself.
There's
actually,
a charm and a prestige, especially in places like Paris. And I mean, Paris is renowned for art. And
That's right.
You're
Well,
going to soak that up if you go
it's
there.
not even Paris. Like I want to live in like some place
Versailles
in
or
the
something.
south of France. That's like maybe Cannes.
Oh, sure.
I guess that's in the south, right? Cannes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. The Cannes. I love Cannes. So
Is that more in the country?
No, Canada is
Well,
almost
think about the film fest. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, okay. So,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
I just for some
Yeah,
reason
yeah.
I love the countryside aspect of France, you know. So
Yeah.
it's like, so the idea of big cities, I wouldn't want to live in all the time. Montreal for me would be my big city.
Yeah.
And then like, I don't know, just like I said, go disappear into like France and just
Yeah.
vanish, and maybe even go to Nigeria every once in a while and vanish there for a little bit. That's what I would want to do.
You're such a creative spirit, though, and you're an urban. You make urban music,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of interesting that you refresh yourself by,
You go-
leaving all of that.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
going to go vanish for a little bit and just relax my mind and come up with new things and come back with new ideas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Moving forward, being a working musician and holding down a family. So this also, I want to draw on, what it means to have a relationship and be a musician. You guys say that, you guys aren't married, you guys don't have children, but is that a result of being a working musician? Is that a result of being an aspiring artist?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so every fiber of my being is in this. So my partner shoots photo video with me and is also a singer in my group. We
Yes.
are acting as a
She's
duo.
a great singer.
Yeah. She's killer. She has a vocal from a vocal degree from McGill, and literally like I made it pretty clear to her like getting with me is tough because it's I'm doing this thing that's very specific. So
Gotta commit.
yeah, you got to
commit
commit
to the
to it,
lifestyle,
and
yeah.
so before this, I was dating a cellist, and we
Mhm.
played in a folk duo together called
Yeah.
Bride and Groom.
Yeah.
And before that, I was playing with another singer-songwriter, so that at least we understood each other's.
Okay,
thing.
so you have a long history of being with women who are also artists themselves.
Yeah, like I really try to express to them very early on that like my lifestyle is certainly alternative, and thankfully I've noticed that most people really enjoy living and making money creatively. So for example, my partner had always taken photos but never learned a camera. So the last 2 years I've literally been paying all the bills while she picks up the skill of photo and video and all that kind of stuff. And now I'm happy to announce that she's shooting weddings and she's doing all that sort of
for her.
stuff. Yeah, so I really tried to empower her in a way that was like, the way it's going to work is like, if you have a 9 to 5, like sometimes I have to work until 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And there's all these things where it's like, yeah, it's not going to work unless we really can commit ourselves to this. Because I feel comfortable with the idea of like going on tour with her if we had like a baby or something. I feel like that's something I could actually get away with. If we're both in the group, we're both singing, and we're both driving, and we're both, the money is within us, and we can get a hotel room with one bed and all this kind of stuff. Like, so for me, I've really kind of put myself in a position where, when I'm working, she can like take photos of me. It helps her portfolio and it helps my Instagram. And so I really tried to make it in a way that's like, I just absorbed her into my project while empowering her to have her own artistic means. I already have the infrastructure to make money with all this stuff, so that was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
But I really was looking for somebody who was like a photographer or someone who could hit the road with me, because I understood that I just don't want to live my life being away from my family all the time. It wouldn't be, nothing would be worth it. So I really, really made it part of my whole thing, but that's where we're at now with music, where it's like, you got to be fully in it, like even to that degree, if you're looking to make that long-term big show jump,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm single, so hey, ladies. Ladies, how you doing? No, listen, I had a hard time balancing, like a relationship with music, because music is art, like creativity, and my art is such a huge part of who I am and what I'm doing right now, and it's my focal point right now, and it's hard for me to be with someone and give them that level of commitment.
Well, you're married
while
to
I'm
music.
married to the music.
That's right.
And I feel like if I'm gonna be with someone, then they're going to always be take second place. Maybe not intentionally, but it will happen. And I think it would just be unfair for them. So I mean, when I do date, I tend to.
But you can't find somebody who appreciates that and supports your
It's
vision.
funny. I hate to say this.
You
but
can.
I hate to say
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
I found it.
Jess is doing
He
it.
did it. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. I mean, I think a lot of people that initially meet me are drawn to the ideas like, oh man, he's doing all these crazy things, and it's so like it's sexy and blah blah blah. But then when
romantic.
they actually are
Yeah.
in it, go like, oh man, it's really tough. Like he really does not have time.
Yeah.
Like it's not just him on Instagram. We're like, guys, I'm really tired. I'm really busy. But but it's literally that's his life. So it's tough. But I think it all depends on the level where you are in your career. I know like a lot of my friends in the past that where they're just starting out, they were trying to push music. They had a stable job at the same time. So they were doing both at the same time. And the second they got into a relationship or had a kid, the music died. Like they just killed it because they just couldn't support it. And for me, this is something that
because they had to move on to something else.
No, because
like in terms of a career or job,
they had to just focus on the kid.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
And they couldn't.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
couldn't. You know, because
Did
music.
they continue to be a musician?
No.
Okay.
They just focused on the kids.
Okay.
So they got they stayed with their regular job
Yep.
because
9 to 5. Yeah.
because they need to. Because I think the entertainment industry, especially early on, is very sporadic. You know, like 1 month you're making a lot of money, the next month you're not. You know, so but when you have a kid, you need to
You get high off of the
Consistency.
successes.
you need to,
Yeah.
you need to feed that. You need to keep your kid alive. So for a lot of my friends that got kids and they all quit the industry, but I stayed in it because I'm not tied to anything, and it's hard for me to be tied to something. Will I eventually find someone? Who knows? Who knows? I tend to try and date now more in the entertainment industry, like actors, artists, photographers.
Somebody who gets it.
Someone that gets
People
it.
who get it.
Yeah, because it's tough to date someone that has a regular life. And I hate to say that word regular, but has a regular life.
Yeah,
Normal,
what the average
the
person
stable-
is
yeah,
doing.
the
Yeah,
stable thing because
Sure.
they
Conventional.
won't
yeah,
understand.
that's right.
There's a certain level of madness to being an artist because you are going to be up until like 5 o'clock in the morning
And
working on
risk.
something. You're gonna
Totally.
A lot of
risky,
people see
yeah.
the risk, right? I mean, like if you're a full-blown artist, you don't really care about the risk. You don't think about it in that sense.
Yeah.
But
No.
a lot of people, they look at it as like, oh, you're an entrepreneur. That's very risky, or you're an artist. What are you
Yeah.
gonna do? How are you gonna make it? You know what I mean?
Well, like I think any career where you're taking an entrepreneurial independence is risky, and it's hard to do that when you're with someone
Who doesn't get it.
It doesn't get it, or you're responsible for another life. Every once in a while, someone will meet someone that luckily.
Okay, so let's touch on that. Do you think then, as an artist or a working musician, it's irresponsible to have children?
I don't think it's irresponsible.
I'm trying to poke at something.
Good.
here.
Awesome.
I don't think it's irresponsible to have children, but you need to be aware that you need to. Once you have a child, your child becomes your priority to keep them alive, and to feed them and to care for them.
That becomes top priority.
Top priority. So if you're going to be a musician and have a child, you have to be aware that you're going to work that much harder, and it will be exhausting. But
Of course, it can motivate you.
Exactly, but you're going to have to work that much harder, and it can be done. I mean, there's a lot of musicians that have blown up that had a kid beforehand and they managed to do it. So
people having children later in life. Final words here. We want to, at the Vocalist Magazine, we want to extend an opportunity to musicians who are just starting out in their career for an opportunity to be featured in the Vocalist Magazine. Just mention one of our topics that we covered today in this episode in the subject line, and you'll be considered for a feature in the magazine. So I just want to say thanks again for listening in. Thanks again for viewing. And Jesse Daniel Smith, thank you for coming about.
Thanks for having me.
Coming aboard.
coming on the boat.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on the boat. We're on a boat now.
We're on a boat right now, just in case you didn't know.
Thanks a lot, Stephen Voyce.
Thank you.
Okay, until next time. Thanks, everyone.